All right, excellent. It is 4:01, and as a preliminary matter, this is Kathy McSweeney, the Chair of the Shrewsbury Housing Authority. Please permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Paul Campanello.
Present. Aye.
Maria Smith.
Here.
Bob Anderson.
Here.
Richard Ricker, are you here yet? We'll come back to him. Kelly Bergeron.
Here.
And I know we have
This
at least one.
conference will now be recorded.
James Griffin, are you on?
Yes.
Excellent. And is there someone else who's joined us? I see it looks like a phone dial in.
That could be Sulco.
Oh, good. All right. Hopefully it is. Good evening. This open meeting of the Shrewsbury Housing Authority is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. In order to find posted with agenda materials for this meeting allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely, so as long as reasonable public access is afforded, so the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Shrewsbury Housing Authority is convening by telephone and video conference, and it was posted at the town hall last Friday, I believe. Correct, Kelly?
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer unless specifically asked by the chairperson or staff person. Anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure the accurate meetings. I, the chair, will introduce each board member or staff member who has the lead role for this particular item or a guest speaker associated with this item. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members first and then to staff members, inviting each by name to provide comments and or suggestions. I will then call upon members to offer a motion and then a second. Please hold until your name is called, and please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking in an effort to reduce the background noise. And I will reach out again. Mr. Ricker, have you joined us? Excellent.
Yes, I have. Thank you.
Great. So first item on the agenda is the minutes from our last meeting.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to accept the January 12th minutes as printed.
I second that.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Ricker,
I say yes.
Mr. Campanello,
Aye.
Ms. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Anderson,
Aye.
motion carries. We do have our accountant, James Griffin, on. I would entertain a motion to adjust our agenda so Mr. Griffin can go next and then get on with his evening.
Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion that we take Mr. Griffin out of order.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote. Mr. Ricker?
Aye.
Mr. Campanello?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
And the chair, Kathy McSweeney, says aye. James, it's all yours. We do, you may have noticed we have a couple of new commissioners with us. So my thought is that I know we have your opening comments here, but if you could also, as you discuss each thing, maybe let us know which particular segment relates to which particular property. I know that was something I found a little confusing my first go around.
Certainly.
Kathy, we don't want to make it easy. for
But,
anybody. It's not our
Commissioners, we're on page 47 of your packet if you're online. What was that, Paul?
Kathy, our objective isn't to make it easy for anybody now. That's not the objective.
Yeah. Yeah. Going rogue again. All right. You have the floor, Mr. Griffin.
Thank you. Again, thank you for inviting me. Well, yeah, I guess it's inviting to the board meeting to go over the budget. So this is the budget for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2022, which will commence on April 1st, 2021. So I'll just go through the narrative to start, just getting the highlights. The executive director's salary in this budget is consistent with the prior year amount. This amount is based on the DHCD ED salary schedule and cannot be adjusted until at which time that salary schedule is adjusted by DHCD. Two, administrative salaries in this budget have been increased by 3%, which is within the guidelines of DHCD's fiscal year 2021 budget guidelines. The maintenance salaries have been budgeted at their current DLWD rates, which were effective on April 1st, 2020, at which time they will adjust on April 1st, 2021. We do not have control of those rates. So due to that fact, there is a provision for an increase for those wages in the budget of $5,500. The fiscal year 21 budget guidelines require that the allowable non-utility expense level be level funded. So we did not earn the right to spend any more money this year on the state properties than we did the prior year in regards to those expenses that are not related to utilities. So that would be all your properties except for the federal building. I always forget the names, I apologize. The office building, which is the federal building. All other projects are state.
And can you tell us what the acronym is for?
The ANUL means allowable non-utility expense level, and it's basically all expenses of the state 400-1 program, which is your 2667 projects, Francis Gardens, and someday I can't remember the other one off the top of my head, and your 705s. And it's for those expenses that are maintenance related, labor related, salary related for admin employees, administrative expenses. They're all expenses of the property except for utilities. DHCD caps those at a certain amount.
Through the chair, if I could.
Certainly.
James, the $5,500 that we set aside in the budget for the maintenance salary increases, was that based on just an approximation of up to 3%?
Basically, yeah. Every year I just do about the same percentage.
Okay. Because the last few years, it's only been 2%, right? For the maintenance?
Might have been. I could go back and check, but
I think that's what we determined when we were talking with, when I was talking with Kelly and Kathy.
I mean, if it's overly high, it'll cover if the overtime goes. I mean, so you have this budget, because of the way DHCD requires budgets to be built. Even if this number is too high, it's not over the allowable non-utility expense level, so we can budget up to that amount basically. So in some cases, it's always better to. I mean, depending on what type of budget you want to build and the type of board you are. Some boards like to budget all the way up to the max number. Some like to budget more realistically, but so not to say, I'm just saying that even if the 55 really is 3,500, we have the allowable, so it didn't affect the allowable non-utility expense level.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. And finally, the state 400 reserve levels are budgeted to roughly be $293,000 at the end of, that should say fiscal year 2022. I apologize for that. Which is 71% of the maximum reserve levels. DHCD requires that the LHA maintain a 35% max reserve level. So what this basically means is in all your state properties, again, all the buildings you operate except for the federal one where the office is, DHCD mandates that your operating reserve level be higher, be at least at 35% of the max. The maximum reserve level is 50% of your budgeted expenses. So if your budgeted expenses are $1 million, half would be 500,000. 35% of that would be about 175,000. You'd have to have reserve levels of 175,000. You're expected to have 293, which is 71%. which again, I think is about a 15 or 20% climb from this point last year. I think when I gave this presentation, I think we were at 50%. So we're going in the right direction, and that's a good sign. So with that, I'll move on to the next pages unless there are any questions about anything else in the narrative.
None for me.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
The next page is just a comparative of the revised 2021 budget compared to the 2022 consolidated budget, and then broken down by programs. For the most part, most of the expenses are level funded from year to year with anywhere from a 2 to 3% increase based on current spending or just an expectation to cover possible increases in costs. One note of point here is that the HAP subsidy is about $125,000 higher than last year's budgeted. That being the increase in HAP costs relating to the increase in the fair market rents of current apartments, and the fact that tenants are paying less due to the unfortunate and we're paying more. Trying to think if there's anything else on here of note. Besides that, there are no, everything else is pretty much standard from the prior year. Are there any questions on this page?
One.
Yeah.
It's Ms. Chair.
Go right ahead.
It's my standard question. I always, when I see all the expenses, D&O is on here somewhere.
I'm sorry?
Is D&O in here somewhere on the general expenses? D&O insurance? I know, it's my standard question. I always ask.
Yes,
because I
it's in the
always don't want
insurance.
to.
Oh, it's in the insurance. It's in the
Thank you.
98,000. Directors and officers insurance is part of the 98,000. Yes.
Okay.
I have a question. Go ahead, Paul.
I was just gonna say, I don't know if Maria knows what I just asked about, and I'm happy to elaborate on it if Ms. McSweeney wants me to.
Go right ahead.
Harrison, is that what you're talking about?
Director and officer insurance, D&O insurance. Are you familiar with it?
Yes.
Okay, good. Then we're all good.
If I could ask you, and if this goes to Kelly as much as you, James, on the protective services, we spent in the revised 2021 budget 24,000. Why are we going down to 20?
Actually, we didn't spend. That was just the budgeted. The 2021 column is the budgeted numbers. That's not the actual spends because the spend amount, because the current year isn't over yet. And on top of that, we're actually spending it less than the budget amount. So that's why I reduced it.
Okay. All right.
And just before we move off of this page, this is what I was referring to about the different programs and the different numbers. Kelly, can you tell us what is 4001?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Kate, okay. Kathy, I'm sorry. I can, the 400 dash.
So,
Oh, all right.
Oh, is it James or am I?
Oh, go ahead, Kelly.
Oh, thanks, James. So the 4001 is the Francis Gardens and Elizabeth Street. The
so this,
689-2 is Glavin, Lake Street. The 689-3 is Ridgeland. The Section 8 is the 173 vouchers, and the MA 41 is the towers.
thank you. All right, go right ahead. Moving on, James.
The 401 also includes your 705 scattered sites. So
Sorry.
what are they, duplexes, Kelly, duplexes or
There is duplexes and there's Liberty, Holden, Rosedale, Parker, South.
So basically 4001 is all the state.
besides your 689s, which are usually paid for by a lease?
DMR, DMH.
Okay, good. Does anyone have any questions on that before that moved on? It took me a while to get that straight.
And when we discuss a subsidy, that's the program that gets a subsidy. You do not receive a subsidy for your 689s. You only receive a subsidy based on the 400 program.
Okay, if no one has any questions, go right ahead. Moving on.
The next page are your two federal programs. So the office building is the MA 41001 on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side is the Section 8 program, or the voucher as it's called currently. So again, it's just comparing the 2021 budget to the 2022 budget. Again, the numbers are basically similar for prior year with a couple of increases just based on current spending and an inflating cost by 2-3% depending on the type of cost. The only note here, as I can mention, is the contract costs are higher than they were in 2021. These numbers are based on your current spending needs. Some of them could be COVID related that got mixed in here. So we may end up being, this budget number may actually be high if some of the reasons your contract cost spending this year are COVID related and we don't have the same need next year. This budget number may be a little higher than we expect to spend. And then the replacement of equipment, that is for, I can't remember, Kelly, was that for?
A tractor?
Thank you. Right. So back down towards the bottom, says replacement equipment, 35,000 compared to 5. This year we're budgeting for a replacement on a tractor. And some work on the truck. Is that what Gary asked for? Yes. So if there are no questions on the federal program, your federal housing program where the office is located, I will move on to the voucher program, which, as Kelly stated, are the 173 units you have out on the street in terms of landlords. Here, the only number to mention again is the fact that the HAP subsidy is higher by about 125,000, and again, that's based on current spending needs. Whether HUD increased the FMRs in the area, or unfortunately, tenants have less income because under the Section 8 program, tenants pay 30% of their income. We cover the rest. So if their income is down, their 30% is less, we pay more. And we are currently at 173 units, correct, Kelly?
Correct.
So we are fully leased up.
Was there a question?
What page are we on? It's hard without.
49.
Thank you. I think
Third
I
page
skipped
of the
one
budget.
page off. Thank you.
Sideways, yeah.
You can use the view function in the PDF, Richard, and rotate it. Upper left-hand corner, hit the view button and hit clockwise. Way up at the top of your screen. Rotate view clockwise.
Learn something new every day.
I don't have that.
All right. If there are no questions on the federal budgets, I won't bore anybody with the next 1, 2, 3, 4. That's just the standard format in which the state budgets go in. The first one would be that 400-1 or 4000-1 that we were discussing. That is Elizabeth Street, Francis Gardens, and your scattered 705s. The next budget says 689-C on it. It's just the consolidated budget of your individual 2689 programs, which are the next two ones, 689-2 and 689-3. So if you were to add 689-2 and 689-3 together, you would get 689-C. It's just the 689-C is just how it's entered into DHCD's system for the budgeting purposes. We track it based on the separate programs of 2 and 3. These are just the standard formats. This is the way the budget has to be entered into DHCD. If there are any questions about them, I'd be happy to go over them, but this is just the standard layout of how the budgets are entered. They're the same exact numbers that you all saw on the first page.
Okay.
So now I'm like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th page in, I believe. It should look like this. Appendix B.
What's the header? What's the title of the page?
It
Page
says
54 plus.
It's 54.
operating subsidy calculation, allowable non-utility, Appendix B.
Page
It's
50.
going top to bottom, not sideways.
Yep.
This is
okay.
your, so as we were discussing earlier, your 400-1 would be eligible for an operating subsidy from the state, your Francis Garden, Elizabeth Street properties, if it was needed. This is how the operating subsidy is calculated if needed. How DHCD works their subsidy is that line 1 says revenue. So this budget is projected to bring in $830,900 of revenue from tenants, miscellaneous income for laundry, interest income earned on any investments, anything like that. And then the next line is your allowable non-utility expense level, where it says $607,500. That's the amount that DHCD says it should cost to operate the 400-1 program. Maintenance supplies, maintenance materials, contract costs, salaries, everything but utilities to run Francis Garden, Elizabeth Street, and your 705s. Normally, right next is allowable increase. The next line says a 1, and then 607 again. That's because we were level funded. In the past, that could be a 4% increase, could be a 10% increase. It's also been a 5% decrease in the past. And then line 5 says utilities. That's your budgeted utilities for that program. So how this schedule works is you take line 1, you back off line 3, and you back off line 5. And you would normally get a result on 6, I'm sorry, I'm misreading it, where it says operating subsidy. But because your 830 is greater than 607 and 222, you do not qualify for a subsidy. So this budget says that you'll end up spending about $829,000 and you have 830. So you are basically right at that point. If your utilities are, say, $5,000 or $7,000 higher than these budget numbers, you'll qualify for a subsidy. Because it doesn't matter what the other expenses are that you spend, DHCD is going to give you the 607 and your actual utilities. So if the 222 becomes 230 or 240, you'll gain a subsidy. And that's the way this schedule works. I've had a lot of housing authorities in the last 4 or 5 years that are in the same boat as you, where for years they've never gotten a subsidy. I mean, 15, 20, ever since they put this in, they've never gotten a subsidy. But because DHCD, like I said, where the 1 is, in the past has increased the allowable non-utility by 10%, 12%, 7%, 5%, driving the 607 number up. But then your rental income only goes up 2 or 3% because you're so heavily elderly driven, which means they get their increases every year for their pensions or their social securities. So your rental is going up 2%, but your expenses are allowed to go up 10 to 12 or 15%. So because of that, eventually you'll end up in a subsidy. If rental income next year only goes up 2% and DHCD increases the allowable non-utility by just 4%, you'll end up in a subsidy position. There's nothing wrong with being in a subsidy position. It just means, though, that once you get into a subsidy position, they have a right to, how do I say it, be a bigger pain than they already are.
Now,
Because they're now giving you money.
do we anticipate a problem with utilities, Kelly, or maybe Richard, you could chime in because of the stormwater surplus, or not surplus, surtax, I guess, whatever that is? Anyone have any insight to that? I know we talked a little bit about it last year.
I don't know if it is, it's something that has arrived at our plate yet, but Kelly, you can tell us that. But the stormwater management is what we're talking about. We have a lot of pavement, so I'm sure that the town has allocated a certain assessment to us. I'm not sure how much it is, but that is certainly an increase in utility costs to us because they count it as a utility in this town.
Right.
And it's substantial. It's substantial. So, James, are you aware of that?
Yeah, you mentioned it to me in the past. That bill, is it part of the water bill or is it a separate bill? Do you know?
Water
No.
and sewer. Yeah.
I'm sorry?
It has replaced the bill that was formerly known as the water and sewer bill, and now it's called the water utility tax bill. But it's
Okay,
the same-
but it's still paid to the same town, and Kelly, it's still coded to water and everything?
Yes.
Yeah, so if you've incurred any of those costs currently, it's in the current year's expenses. And again, the utility projections are based on current spending habit plus historical data. So the historical data might be out of whack a little, but the current spending is based on these numbers. So if you've incurred any cost, there is some cost in these numbers. But if, like Richard said, they really haven't hit us yet for them, then no, then those additional costs are not in this budget.
I think, though, James, they've hit us already. I think that's why we're so close to the subsidy position that we're in now, because it was a big difference a couple of years ago. So
Okay. So again, like I said, I would expect next year's budget to be in a subsidy position. And again, that's not a bad thing. It's just like I said, it just means that if they're going to give you 10 grand and they don't like something you did, they can now make your lives more miserable because they'll say, well, we're not going to give you the money.
yeah,
It's
well,
just who they are and what they do. And in the first year, you have to make sure you get on their radar because DHCD has been known to forget to pay you because you've never been paid before. I had a housing authority that was subsidy for 2 years straight, and never got paid because prior to that, they were never subsidized. It took them 2 years to finally get them in the cycle of being paid.
Well, it's unfortunate. Yeah, it's unfortunate from my point of view because we've always been able to point at ourselves with pride, saying that our state facilities did not require subsidy. So it's always been a point of pride for us as commissioners to be able to point to us as a well-run authority. Unfortunately, now as we get into subsidy, that argument is taken off the table.
And again, it's not a show of poor management or poor, the board doing a bad job. It's a sense that just the way the formula is driven, that DHCD is increasing your allowable spending, but the revenue is just not at the same pace as the expenses.
I understand. It's just the perception, James.
No. And I understand, and I appreciate your perception. It is something I would be happy to tell people all the time. But at least, I can at least say, well, it's not my fault I need to sub, but it is what it is.
True.
It's not like we're blowing the money out the window or opening it. It's just,
No. Okay, moving on.
So there are no more questions about Appendix B. I won't mention anything about the next schedule. It's pretty self-explanatory. It is the salary schedule. Excuse me, I'm sorry. It is the salary schedule. If anyone has any questions about it, like Richard mentioned earlier, there's a provision for the increase. Again, that says 4/1/2020. It should say 4/1/2022. I'm sorry with the dates for 5,500, but the maintenance rates are the current DLWD rates as of today. In 5 weeks, Kelly, they'll probably move. 6 weeks?
Around March.
Right.
Middle of March, we get notification.
And we're not allowed to estimate those rates with DHCD because when they look at the budget, they pull the most recent. DHCD has every DLWD rate in the state. So when you submit the budget, they tick and tie it. So if we were to estimate them being a 1.5% or 2% increase, they bounce the budget. So that's why we always have to go on what it is, even though we know that it's going to go up like 3 weeks after we file the budget. Are there any questions or concerns about this? Okay. The next page is the administrative expense page. Again, it's kind of self-explanatory. It just goes over the type of costs that we have for operating the building, which the allowable non-utility expense level are supposed to cover: legal, training, travel, my costs, your auditing fees, and then, administrative expenses relating to the phones, computers, leasing. Most of these were probably increased about 1% or 2%. My bill was the same way, increased a few. And then I just wanted to point out that your auditing bill was probably increased by $4,000 or $5,000. I think that's what I did. Single audit cost. Yeah, the auditing bill was actually increased by $3,000, and that's only based on what I've heard through the grapevine, based on what auditors are going to do, specifically related to CARES Act funding and the need to audit a little more probably. So that might be a little heavy with your auditor, but we won't know until the auditors do the audit, right, Kelly?
Correct.
I have heard from the local auditor in town that Kelly used to use that they plan on raising their rates up to $5,000 per job, just because of the CARES Act money.
So that'll go away with CARES Act. So they'll reduce their pricing then doing that?
Yeah, you know how it works. Once the cost gets there, it never goes back down. I mean, but again, you don't use them any longer, so I don't know what your current auditor is going to do. But like I said, I've just heard, and they have most of my clients, I've just heard what they've done, so I just built that into your budget. It fits in the allowable again. But if your auditor doesn't increase it, then we have some savings there.
And I have a 3-year contract with the current.
All right, so we probably do have some savings in there. That is nice. But he may add it as an additional, which wasn't originally known when the contract was done, correct, right? There's probably something in there saying that if something changes. Are there any questions on the schedule? Okay. The next page is the insurance and employee benefit page. This is always a fun page to go over. There's Paul's directors and officers insurance. The only thing of note here is that the state on your state projects, so your Francis and Elizabeth and your 705s and the 689s, the state RFPs the insurance. So you just pay whatever insurance company the state gets, and you pay it per unit cost. Unfortunately, the per unit cost went from $126 last year to $170 per unit. It went up $44 per unit on the state side. And that's according to the state and their insurance company saying they took a huge loss, blah, 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 blah. So just wanted to point that out to you, that the highest increase in the insurances this year were your state property insurance. Everything else was pretty much flat, maybe a 2-3% increase. And then on your employee benefits, again, unfortunately, these are all uncontrollable costs, except for the fact that, Kelly, we never figured out why the town gave us such a small bill, right?
We know, and I've emailed
Is
everything.
the board aware of that?
No. What are you
No.
referring to?
Oh, I'm sorry, Kelly. I should. I just want you to know, and she's not hiding anything, that the state, the town, Shrewsbury Town Retirement System sent Kelly a bill for your year insurance retirement payment of close to what, $13,000
Yeah.
instead of
was-
130. I think somewhere along the way there, when they typed it up, they missed a zero. And Kelly, you reached out already, right?
I have.
Right. So we're going to get a huge savings in 21 on the retirement bill because either they, I hate to use this term, screwed up, or the actuarial values really got adjusted and the town has to pay more than you. But the actual employee benefits relating to retirement in this fiscal year ending in March, should see a large reduction because your retirement payment was completely out of whack.
500,000.
Right. I have rebudgeted this.
Did they say anything? What did they tell you when you brought it up?
I haven't received nothing from them. We got our bill, we paid that. James reached out and said, you may want to contact them where they're missing about 100,000. I'm still waiting. I'm not going to pay them without a bill.
No, I don't
but
want
when
you to pay them
called,
another.
Did they acknowledge that it was down off by $100,000, or did they say, well, check it out and let you know?
Greg said he'll let me know.
And who's
Well-
Greg?
He's the director of the retirement board.
Yeah, he's the
Thanks.
administrator. He's
So the only thing I can, again, that's why this number is based on what I think the real number is, not what you paid in the current year. And I guess the only thing and Kelly reached out, we did everything we could. All I'm saying is that I just want to let you know that I don't want you to be shocked, say 6 months from now, if the town gives us a bill for $100,000 and says, oh, we screwed up last year and Kelly has to pay it. And then you ask her about it. I just wanted, to make sure that you're aware that we may see a windfall this year.
Are we going to be able to pay it?
Jim, just exactly. Suppose that does happen. The town says, mea culpa, we were wrong. Here's your bill for $100,000. What's our legal, and maybe Richard, this is a question for a lawyer. What's our
It's
position?
more like Richard's question, yeah.
Are we liable for that if it's an error? I wouldn't think so.
No, I think we'd still have to pay it. It would be what you'd call a reconciliation. Governments are not treated the same way as private individuals or entities. Okay.
So they get to make a mistake, in other words. To put words in your mouth, they get to be wrong and we take it.
That's right. They get to be wrong and we have to pay it.
All right. I'm just asking because that's a huge, huge swing. That's $100,000.
And James, can you just let them know that we did budget this last year, so we do have the money if they send us.
Oh, yeah. No. Wait. Wait. When we did the budget, it was budgeted at 132 or 100. It was all, that's what I'm saying. If we don't get an additional invoice, we're going to see a windfall because of that. It's not like we don't have the money to pay it. It's just something that'll it'll fall into our reserves at the end of the year.
Well, as long as we have the ability to deal with a correction, if that's what we get.
Yeah, because it was budgeted, Richard. Yeah, that would not be an issue, right?
So
My
I'm fine.
point of view was a different angle. Mine was one from equity and justness and proper, but Richard answered.
I don't think that even comes into this picture, frankly.
I
It's
don't know
like,
what I was thinking.
it's like, it's like, I'll give you an example. It's like people, Maria and Kathy, people, they get billed all the time for lots in this town that they've always thought were buildable lots, right? And they've been paying that tax bill all these years. And then when they go to sell it, they find out that it's not buildable. And they say, what the hell are you talking about? I've been assessed for $250,000, $300,000 for this lot. What are you talking about? The town doesn't have to give back. And all you can do is seek an abatement. So
I just wanted to bring that up because I knew it was there, and I know Kelly reached out, and I was just amazed that they didn't immediately hear what Kelly said and said, wait a minute, and went back and looked and said, oh yeah, we screwed up, we'll send you a new bill. I'm just overly amazed, especially in the sense that I've heard about all these pension funds being way underfunded, and I thought there was a movement in the state to make some adjustments there. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Shrewsbury historically is moving towards getting funded, but I don't think we're there yet. So I think that it's more than likely that this is a mistake. But I think we've talked about enough on TV here, and I think that.
Yep. Oh, I forgot about the fact that you guys are on TV too. I'm sorry.
I think that enough said. I think the bottom line is that if they don't get the point and look it up now, then so be it.
I
would say now brought it to their attention to the best of our ability, right?
Oh yeah, I forgot all about it, Rich. You're right. I can't say any more to them now. You're right. So the next schedule again is just a formatting schedule. How DHCD wants the utility costs shown on their budget form. It just basically takes your costs at one point, your consumption gets an average rate. You then estimate what you expect to spend next year in consumption, and out comes a cost. Just a standard form. It ties to the front page. There isn't really much here unless someone wants to discuss it, but it's just how the utilities are shown to the state. The next page is the breakdown of the maintenance supplies and contract costs. Again, it links to the front page for each program. Again, some of these costs were probably increased 2 to 3% based on expectations in the next year. And again, if somewhere in here, some of these costs were slightly inflated last year because of COVID related, I don't know, the plumber, we did more we outsourced more. I'm just saying that. So with that said, there may be some added costs here that we won't see next year, but this is the current spending pattern of these costs. Are there any questions? The next page is just a schedule on showing how the rental income is generated for each program. So here we have it broken down by 667, which is Francis Gardens and Elizabeth Street. Your 705s, which are your scattered sites. Both of those go into your 400 program. Your 689s are your monthly leases. And then your federal MA 41. So the average current monthly rent rolls for each of those projects are there, and then annualized by multiplying by 12. Other income, like I said, we generate money on laundry, late fees. You also have your cell towers. We only have 2 now, right, Kelly?
2, yes, because they've joined together.
Right. I was going to say at one time I think it was 3. It's down to 2 now because of the joining of Sprint or T-Mobile and something like that. Right.
Hey, James, since a lot of people watch this, can you explain the cell tower money? How it offsets?
The cell tower money is federal dollars because the cell towers are on the federal building. When I say cell tower, that's why it's charged with the MA41. These are the towers on top of your office that Sprint and Verizon are paying you a monthly leasing fee to have the towers on the building. The money is project-related money, which means it has to go into the federal program, and then it's allowed to be used for any operating expenses of the federal program. It's not just for tenant services. It's not set aside for any specific purpose whatsoever. These are funds that are eligible to be used for any operating expenses of the federal program. So in theory, they can be used to pay for salaries. They can be used to pay for a truck. They can be used to pay for the roof. Any eligible expense of the federal program, windows, anything. Can somebody be carved off attendant services? Sure. But again, that is a board directive or an executive director decision. There's nothing in the regs or nothing anywhere stated by HUD that cell tower money has to be used for certain specific expenses. The only specific expense they have to be used for is related to the federal building. That is it. But for any federal building expense, not just a specific one or two.
Thank you, James.
You're welcome.
Did our income change with the merge and we only have 2 rather than 3?
Richard, you would know, this is going back a year or 2 years ago.
I swear at one time we were getting 3 deposits a month. Maybe the 2 of them got combined into 1 or something, or 1 lease gave out. I'm sorry, Kelly. Maybe it's a few years back now that I think about it.
It could be a couple of years back.
We had a merger, a consolidation of a couple of carriers, and it resulted in a reduction of the income.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
And then you got your investment income here.
I would point out it was minor, if any, though, Kathy, because we went back to them and argued that they still had the same number of antennas. So,
Okay.
so we I believe my recollection is we said no, you got to keep paying, and we ended up settling for pretty close to what we were getting. So
Good, thank you.
So the last schedule is what DHCD calls a schedule of non-routine, which is basically expenses that do not cost against the allowable non-utility expense level. These are costs that directly are taken from your reserves or from the current year's net operating income, however you want to look at it. If you're making money in the current year, then you can say you're using that current year net income to pay for these expenses, or they come right out of your reserves. They're not part of any operating subsidy or anything like that. So every year we budget for non-routine expenses that might happen at your Francis Garden or your Elizabeth Street. So we have $10,000 set aside for anything like that, an emergency building repair or, something of that. Same on the federal where the office is. And then we always budget for appliances on the state and on the Fed. Stoves, refrigerators while we're doing turnovers or anything breaks, anything like that. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we have $30,000 set aside for Gary's desire to replace a tractor and do some upgrades to, I believe, his vehicle. And again, all these would come out of reserves or current year net income. So that is the presentation. Is there any questions, concerns, comments?
And just to clarify, by Gary's vehicle, you mean Gary's work vehicle, not Gary's personal vehicle, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought that was, I would
Yeah,
know.
we're not saying Gary's personal vehicle. Just so
I thought
everyone
it was his wife's vehicle.
knows. Don't get us in trouble here.
James, as always, I thank you for your in-depth explanation. I think that it's fairly comprehensive and understandable. So thank you for putting
You're welcome.
As always,
Again,
James, thank you very much. I echo Mr. Ricker's sentiments. You do a good job going from high level to detail back to high level. And for me, it's always the perfect blend. So thank you.
You're welcome. And again, I always appreciate the time and working with Kelly. And like I said, the Shrewsbury Housing Authority has come a long way since the day we've gotten there. So between the board and the management, it's come a long way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, James.
Thank you, James.
Ms. McSweeney, do you need a motion to jump back into order? I think you do.
No.
Thank you,
Yeah, I
James.
think we'll take on the
Do
vote.
we have to vote? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You need to do the certifications.
Yep.
The other thing we don't have to say to James is good luck driving home.
Oh, no, I'm home already. You didn't see the nice? Oh, no, I already left the office about 2 o'clock today.
Usually we're sending you off though in a snowstorm when you come and visit us. So
Oh, yeah. Maybe next year I'll come out to visit.
Hopefully you can.
Yeah, I'd like to. I mean, I'm getting a little cooped up in my office as it is.
So is this a consolidated motion, Kathy, or is this Kelly?
I think
You
These,
have to
I feel like we need to make two historically, Richard, state and federal.
one for 400. No, you need to do one for the 400 program, one for the 689 program, and then if you want to do one for all consolidated, that's up to you. But the state requires that you approve the 400-1 or 4000-1 separate from the 689.
That's what I thought.
Right, that's because they have those certification forms, and I'm sure Kelly has presented to you that you need to sign.
Okay, then I'll make a motion that we approve the 400-1 budget.
I'll second that.
You did?
Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote. Mr. Ricker,
Aye.
Mr. Campanello,
Aye.
Ms. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Anderson,
Aye.
and Kathy McSweeney says aye. Motion carries.
I'll make a motion that we approve the 689 budget, please,
Second that.
as printed.
Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Ricker,
Aye.
Mr. Campanello,
Aye.
Ms. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Anderson,
Aye.
and Kathy McSweeney says aye. Motion carries.
If I could, just Madam Chair, ask a question of our accountant. James, is it necessary for us to make a motion to approve consolidated budgets?
I would say go for it just because it includes the federal, and you haven't really approved the federal by saying the 400 and the 689. So I would just do one more to approve the full budget as presented, but
I would make a
that's
motion.
just me.
I'd make a motion, Madam Chair, to approve all the budgets consolidated as printed.
I will second that.
Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll roll call vote. Mr. Ricker,
Aye.
Mr. Campanello,
Aye.
Ms. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Anderson,
Aye.
Kathy McSweeney votes aye. Motion carries.
Kelly, do you have the federal form?
I have all the forms.
Federal one's different. The HUD form, okay. I couldn't remember if I sent it to you, that's all. The HUD one?
Note the 689 and the 4001.
You don't have the HUD one then? There's a HUD one that has to be sent off to HUD. Send me an email and I'll send it to you tomorrow. It
Okay.
needs the signature of the board chairman, that's it.
So
Right,
just, the HUD just needs the chair, but the other ones need everyone's signature, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so over the
And
next couple of days, everyone needs to make arrangements to get down to the towers to sign that. And I'd say just work with Kelly on that.
I won't be around until next Monday.
Okay, is that okay from a timeline standpoint?
That's fine.
the budget just has to be submitted by the end of the month, that's all.
End of
Right.
February.
Yep.
Okay, then it doesn't have to be done this week. Whenever you have a chance, just don't call Kelly at the 26th at 4 in the
Yeah.
afternoon.
If you want to catch me first thing tomorrow morning, that's fine. Okay? Otherwise, I'll catch you later.
And that's fine. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much,
Can
Jane.
I add to that, Ms. McSweeney?
Yes, I will have. Go ahead,
Can I
Bob.
add to that, Ms. McSweeney, the signing? Assuming the chair and myself are going to sign checks, can the budget forms be in that? So at least it knocks off her and I?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, I will entertain a motion to go back to our agenda.
Thank you, James.
Thank you. All
Thank you.
take care, have safe. Thank you
James.
again. Kelly, I just emailed it to you.
Thank you.
We return to the regularly scheduled program.
I'll get, I don't know if those are the exact right words, Mr. Ricker, but I will second that motion.
And I will ask if there's any discussion. Seeing none, by roll call vote, Mr. Ricker.
Aye.
Mr. Campanello,
Aye.
Ms. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Anderson,
Aye.
and Kathy McSweeney says aye. So we will go back to our treasurer and financial report, which begins on page 5 of our packet.
Everything looks in order, Matt, there. I don't think there's a motion required.
The next motion would be for the vendor account register, and I'll make a motion for that. If that's Ms. McSweeney probably wants to put it up for questions first.
Sure.
You can make a motion in a second, then we can do questions. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
It's very light, but maybe we met, it's exactly February is a short month. I don't know. It's uncharacteristically light. Not that I'm complaining.
I really didn't have any questions. It's pretty basic.
I have none, Mr. Sweeney.
Okay, good. I just had a question on the management and computer services.
Yes. That is where we enter all the tenant information. It's a computer-based MCS.
Okay, and is it usually this high, or is it,
It's a yearly.
so it's an annual fee? Okay, thank you. Anyone have anything else? Then, seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote. On Paul's motion, Mr. Ricker?
Aye.
Mr. Campanello?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next is the portability register.
I'll make a motion to approve, I'm sorry, Mr. Ricker, the 3 checks in the amount of $3,097.92.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, by roll call vote, Mr. Ricker?
Aye.
Mr. Campanello?
Aye.
Ms. Anderson? Oh, I'm sorry.
Aye.
Ms. Smith, then Mr. Anderson. Ms. Smith? Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
I'll make a motion that we approve the landlord and tenant checks in the amount of $141,796.55.
I will second that.
Any discussion? Seeing none, by roll call vote, Mr. Ricker?
Aye.
Mr. Campanello?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
And Kathy McSweeney says aye. Motion carries.
I'll make a motion to approve the payroll as printed, please.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Then by roll call vote, Mr. Ricker?
Aye.
Mr. Campanello?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Kathy McSweeney says aye. Motion carries. That concludes our financial. Moving on to correspondence. Kelly, tell us a little bit about senior housing in phase 2, if you could.
So with the email that you guys see, this was just an email confirmation that senior housings are still prioritized in phase 2, even though the website, it appeared that we're no longer included. We are included. And the website's been updated. So that's all that email has to do. It was just clarification from Donna Brown, the executive director of Mass Narrow, just clarifying that we are still included in phase 2, part 2.
And we don't know what the time frame is, right?
Well, that's the next slides. I've been in 2 webinars already. One of the webinars on January 28th had 750 participants. There was all executive directors and property managers. I'll just go over a little bit. I won't read word to word regarding the slides, but basically it started on January 13th. Governor Baker announced we would be included in phase 2. The next slide just is definitions of housing authorities and affordable housing. The slide after that is what defines a resident, what defines staff.
Are we looking at slides in our
Yeah.
screen?
It's after the vacancy reports, Richard. It starts at about
Yeah, you gotta
page
scroll down 3 or 4. It's slightly out of order, yeah.
On
got I got it. Okay, sorry.
So on page 6 of the slides, it has a definition what a resident is and definition of what a staff is. Staff can be all persons paid, unpaid, or volunteering at each of our housing locations. The slide after that has to do with the Federal Pharmacy Partnership. In per CDC, housing is excluded from the FPPP. The next slide is for state agencies that were not enrolled with FPPP.
And that would be us.
Yes, right after that, it just talks about the vaccines. There's 2 vaccines right now. There's Moderna and Pfizer. The next slide talks about how I have to inform our residents and promote that the vaccine is safe and that there will be no cost regarding the vaccine. They may have to show their insurance cards, but the cost of the vaccine is free. Now we get to the fun part. Is the deployment options. The first was leveraging with an existing pharmacy partnership. That could be CVS, Walgreens, Costco, UMass, any place that would be able to administer the vaccine. The second option would be contact our local Board of Health, but as Shrewsbury is regionalized, so it's part of Worcester Board of Health. And the third option would be to have residents and staff, they may schedule an appointment on their own. The next slide is a guidance.
Can I interrupt you and ask a question there?
You sure can.
So there's no notion or idea of a stand-up clinic at the tower or a mass vaccination of all of our residents or something like that. It's 1, 2, or 3, and they're all, the way I read this quite simply on slide 11, page 32, is you, Kelly, have to find CVS to agree or a Board of Health to agree or tell the residents to go on their own. That's the takeaway from this, for me at least, correct?
That is the takeaway. But at the end, I have some good news to share.
Can we get to the can we skip to the end then?
Basically, it's just saying leveraging with a pharmacy. And to reach out to the local Board of Health. And to print, publish the information to residents and staff. The next slide is about vaccination sites, including pharmacies. And then it's that wonderful map of locations that it's very difficult for our elderly folks to manage and to go on to find a location. The next slide is the responsibilities for housing authorities that will be hosting a clinic. And the planning survey. And the outcome. And then we can skip over the lessons learned from FPPP. We can skip over the frequently asked questions. And then the next slide, excuse me, the next slide talks about informing residents, thinking if we can sponsor an on-site clinic, finding a partner, estimating number of vaccines, completing a survey, start collecting the paperwork, and then start planning how to operationalize the clinic. And then the next slide is a website to show you a timeline. At the end of all that, all housing authorities and property managers, our heads were spinning. Something that we thought would be easy as like having a flu clinic turned into a lot of preparation. I was a little discouraged on Friday, but right before 4 o'clock, my phone rang, and it was somebody who reached out wondering if they wanted to be a partner. And just to let you know, we are in the beginning of the early stages. So this person who reached out to me was Dr. Castile, who is the Commissioner of Health and Human Services with the City of Worcester. She reached out and asked if I already had a partner. I told her no. She said, would you be willing to work with us? I said, absolutely. So I said, what does it detail? What do I need to do? She said, you need to start doing surveys. That's our beginning step. So on Friday, we printed out the surveys. It was delivered personally to all the residents. And I gave them a short deadline. I told them everything needed to be back by Monday because I didn't want to lose this opportunity with the partner. Out of 235 of our residents, 168 have replied back stating they are willing to get the vaccine. When I get the time, the place, the date, I will definitely reach out to everybody because I'm going to ask for volunteers. This is a huge process that we have to go through just to have a clinic here. To give you a timeline of everything that needs to be done, it goes all the way down to the number of pens that we would need. The same resident can't use the same pen. I need a staff at the entrance, the exit. I need a staff monitoring or a volunteer monitoring after these people get their shots. I need sanitizing wipes that every time one person sits down, we have to wipe it down. I'm going to need, we already have masks. We need gowns for all of our staff members. We need someone signing all these people in. It's a huge process. The room has to be of certain 10 by 10, I believe. There needs to be doors open. The airflow needs to be at the right temperature. There needs to be an in exit, out exit. People that are walking in like the community room, people can't be leaving the community room, so they would have to walk around the building. I know I can do it at the towers. I know I can do it at Francis Gardens. Elizabeth Street, I don't think the community room is big enough for the amount of people that we need. So that's the only thing I would ask if we have the clinic here at Francis Gardens, that we're going to need transportation for the amount of people who responded to at Elizabeth Street that would come to the towers. It's a long process. I don't see this happening till the end of February, beginning of March, even if it does happen. But we do have somebody right now who's willing to work with us.
So the bottom line is, Kelly, we could potentially have two sites, Francis and the Towers. And what do you estimate you'll need for staff/volunteers to host each of these? If we get approval and everything else,
8 to 15.
8 to 15. How many staff do you have?
Including maintenance, I only have a staff of 8.
Okay.
I'm going to be reaching out to other departments, maybe in the town, asking if they would help out.
Okay. And you need our help too.
Yes.
Yeah, you might consider council on aging.
Yes, I just want a certain date. I just want Dr. Castile to say, okay, UMass said this date, because right now it's getting their hopes up that we could possibly have a shot. And if it doesn't happen, I don't want to give them false hopes right about now.
That's exactly the correct way to look at it, because everything is so uncertain right now.
And everything changes. What I keep explaining to my residents is, if you can get the shot, go and get the shot. Do not wait until this clinic happens.
So Kelly, when you do get a heads up that it's actually going to happen, I think you'll be able to reach out to Council on Aging, Shrewsbury Community Services. I mean, I'm sure that I would hope that they would cooperate to the extent of getting our residents there.
And I think we will work as a team, and everybody will do this for our residents. We all want to see them get the shots.
Absolutely.
I think we can get Kristen Lass at the town level, and she probably would encourage some cooperation from these other agencies.
Yes.
Any other questions on that?
No, good update. Like Richard said, let us know what you need from us whenever you need it. Even if it's, we all got a reminder on online and offline etiquette given the surge. But what was very clear to me is you are still able and allowed to by law to disseminate information to us via email. We can't have discussion about it. But
Correct.
You could say, here's what I need, here's what's happening. Anyone call me back if you can assist. Meaning if you find out something tomorrow or next week, we shouldn't wait for another board meeting. If you need our help, just do a broadcast email, and we know well enough not to respond to the group, but you're allowed to disseminate information. I assume everyone else on this call recently got that updated email stating just that. So. My sense is it's probably been scope creep with so many offline meetings that they put that out to reiterate that it is okay to do that.
Great, good. All right, well, good work on that, Kelly, and keep us posted. Obviously, we'll do whatever we can, as everyone else has said. Just scrolling back to our vacancy reports, which is the first one is on page 16 of your packet. There's not a lot to report here.
Nope.
And then there is a little bit of update at the towers, though.
The towers seem to be having a turnaround with vacancies. We have 2 handicap apartments. 2
Stunned.
refusals.
I'm stunned that we're getting refused here.
Yeah, 2 local handicap refused. One of the handicap, the maintenance are still in there working. And then we have apartments 410 and 708. Those have been offered and accepted by local residents. It's just we are having a difficult time finding handicap.
Okay.
We might have to offer it to a local resident
Can we do that?
Yes.
Well, this
We-
is the second month in a row we've had that refusal on one of them anyway.
Yes, apartment 103. It's been vacant since December. I've also reached out to other housing authorities to see.
Okay. Shame to have it go empty. Okay, moving on to the Section 8 program. We're at capacity there. Excellent. And then the social services report.
Yes.
Nothing really significant there, I don't think, Kelly.
Are we having an animal control problem at one of our facilities?
We are. A dog keeps getting loose.
Same dog.
Same dog.
Is it at the towers or?
No, Francis Gardens.
What's the problem if the dog gets loose? Aside from the leash law.
The
How does-
dog
how does Shirley have-
sometimes is just let out by himself. Sometimes the dog is tied up. Sometimes the dog is left alone and barking all the time. The animal control officer has been involved, and Karen Allis is now involved.
Okay. This is probably a very dumb question, but I assume, maybe Mr. Ricker, Kelly, that our lease doesn't state anything about reasonable and appropriate care for pets or something. I mean, I know we can have a pet, but do we expressly say it can't be left alone unattended? Not that I'm advocating that. Everyone knows I'm a dog person, but I'm asking, does the lease, do we have protection in the lease for such an issue?
There is a pet policy. I haven't looked at it in a while, but
It's in the pet policy. And we don't jump all the way to this without talking to the resident a few times.
Fair enough. That's what I just want to make sure. All right. Believe me, I'm just trying to understand the coverage that we have and the protection. Okay.
And
Right.
with the dog barking unattended, it is disturbing the peace and quietness of
Totally.
all residents.
It disturbs the quiet enjoyment of the residents. Yes.
Right. It's unacceptable. That's why I was asking. That's my point.
Perhaps those policies that should be on our website.
They
It
are.
is. Yeah. All the policies were uploaded. We had a request from someone for policies, so rather than hand them out, Kelly or Shirley, I believe, uploaded them all to the website. It is a little hard to find because you have to go to become a resident, and then I think it's frequently asked questions maybe, or there's a tab there. So it is kind of hard to find, but it's there. So if anyone asks you for those things, tell them to go to becoming a resident, and then they should be able to find the path.
Thank you. Maybe when we re-up with our provider, we can have them get an easier path put together.
That's an excellent idea, because I wouldn't have found it. And I think the person who asked me couldn't find it until Kelly gave me the steps.
Well, that's something we should follow up on when it's time to renew.
Okay.
So we just had a bill for quarterly maintenance and hosting. It was nothing. It was in the bills you just approved. It was a few $100. But in that few $100, I think it's a quarterly bill. So I don't even think it's ever gone up. It's gone up marginally. I think it was $1,000 a year, 3 or 4 years ago, more than that. 5 or 8 years ago when we did this, now it's $1,200 a year. So that's all reasonable. But included in that is support work, and there's some baseline level of support for bugs and things. But if we wanted to say, can you just change this? They're a service-driven business. It would just be a phone call from Kelly or whomever. If they want me involved, fine. Kelly and I can go off on a one-off. I know it's an operational thing to say, can we make this change? And they're glad to do it. It might be time and materials, but again, it's nickels and dimes, not big dollars. So.
I think it's important for people to be able to access our policies in an easy fashion. So I think I would encourage that.
In there, every time we call them, They're very, very nice and
Kelly,
informative.
why don't I leave it with you? And if you want to
Okay.
pull me in as the domain expert or the committee of one or whatever, I'm happy to help, but I don't want to overstep. So that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, can I just find out,
Is
Kelly,
that
how much
it,
it
Ms.
cost
McSweeney?
us to do that? And then it seems worthwhile anyway, but at least let make sure it's not going to be an outrageous charge.
If it is,
And it would be good if it was on the, like, policies was a tab right up there with becoming a member or anything like that. And it seems easy. All they would have to do is direct the tab to the policies.
Yeah. It's probably a few hours work at whatever. I'm making this up. Please don't. I know we're live, but 50 or $100 an hour. It's probably a few $100s for a job, on the high side. But Colin, if there's an issue, pull me in. But yes, that platform that we chose in that template was done on WordPress, so it's a very modifiable, easy, customizable site.
Okay. I think that kind of falls under new business, but was there any old business or any other new business? We'll just do business.
Or just business.
Business.
None for me, ma'am.
Okay. Anybody have anything else?
No, ma'am.
All right, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
so moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none by roll call vote. Mr. Ricker,
Aye.
Mr. Campanello,
Aye.
Ms. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Anderson,
Aye.
and Kathy McSweeney says aye. This meeting of the Shrewsbury Housing Authority is adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Aye. Thank you.
We'll see you later.
Thank you.
Stay well.
Bye.
Bye.
Kelly, I'll call you tomorrow about getting checks.
Not a problem.
Don't want to go out in the blizzard.
Bye, thank you.
All right, bye, everyone. Stay safe.